Hi, this is James Page at the Inca Conference 2023. We've just had an interesting policy debate on the plenary stage, and I'm joined by one of those key speakers, Rebecca Molyneux, who is Deputy Director for Broadband at DSIT. Rebecca, thank you for coming and taking a few minutes to talk to us. I wanted to pick up on one of the key things you talked about and what was happening on the panel. And you talked about competition and talked about how maybe the big picture conversations about competition are things that the government really doesn't need to hear about, and you wanted to hear more technical responses from people. So it'd be good to dive into that a bit. But knowing the way Inca and some of its members feel, I don't think sometimes they have an issue with the government's position, but sometimes the way they feel as a regulated entities by the regulator maybe doesn't always feel like competition is at the forefront of the way that's being done. What would your thoughts be on that?
Sure, so great to be here today. Competition is absolutely central to our policy. We believe competition drives investment, drives lower consumer prices, and fundamentally will build the networks that we all want to see in this country. In terms of how that feels to members, we obviously work very closely with Ofcom, but they're an independent agency, but we influence and we set strategic priorities for Ofcom, of which competition is absolutely key. If that sort of doesn't feel like it's working effectively for members, then we're keen to dive into some of the details of that. We're keen to understand, as the market does inevitably shift over the coming years, as we sort of get towards the end of network build, the market will naturally shift, and we want to make sure, working with Ofcom, that we continue wholesale infrastructure competition through that next phase. So what I'd encourage people to do is to get in touch with Inca, with DSIT, and let us know how we can work with Ofcom to shape that next stage so that we can continue a really healthy and thriving altnet sector.
Okay, great. Thank you for clearing some of that up. That makes a lot of sense. One of the ways that you interact with the market is through consultations and through that kind of sort of more formal policy-making route. And one that's just closed has been about the hard-to-reach areas and getting to that final 1%. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about where that is in its process and what it's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So through commercial build and through our Project Gigabit, we want to get gigabit coverage to as many people in the country as possible, at least 99% of the population. But we all know there will be that final couple of 100,000 people, perhaps fewer than 100,000 people, is our current estimate, that won't have that ultra-fast coverage because of the remoteness of where they live, whether it's islands or deep countryside. But we still want those individuals and businesses to have world-class connectivity. It just will probably look a bit different. And so we just closed consultation on those very hard-to-reach properties in terms of what standards will they need in terms of connectivity, and the Broadband Universal Service Obligation, which ensures a minimum level of coverage to those properties. So we will be working on policy for that final 1% or less, final 100,000 of the country. And we're, again, keen to work with the industry to shape that policy, to make sure that lots of different companies can access whatever we put in place, and that those people do get good connectivities too, so that absolutely no one is left behind across the country.
Great. Does that mean, when you mean that maybe it will look slightly different, that you're considering hybrid options that might be involving wireless and other technologies?
We are always technology neutral, so even with Project Gigabit, that's completely technology neutral. If wireless solutions can deliver gigabit capability, then they can absolutely be funded under Project Gigabit. So we will always be technology neutral in whatever solutions we put in place, and that's what this consultation we've just closed was about. It was about setting those minimum standards for reliability, for latency, for speed, so that when we are looking at technology solutions, we can check on capability, not on what they are, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. So I think sort of final message from yourself would be, whether it's on, maybe not this particular one that may have closed, but on consultations or in other ways, if people want to get in touch, then DSIT is open to hear from Inca members.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to us that we hear from all players in the market, big or small, regional players. We have good links with the market, but we don't talk to everyone at the moment, and we'd love to hear from Inca members. Inca is probably the best way to do that, so if people listening are Inca members, get in touch through Inca, and I'm sure they'd be happy to give my details and my team's details out, and we look forward to talking to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. I know you're busy, so we'll let you get back to the conference, but really appreciate you taking a little time to talk to Inca today.
Thank you. Been good to be here.